is a part of our heritage. Many lakes and rivers bear its name. Not only is the beaver known for its high-quality fur, reddish-brown in summer and dark brown in winter, but also for its engineering, architectural, and woodcutting abilities. Castor canadensis is the largest North American rodent and belongs to the family Castoridae. The adults generally weigh between 15 and 25 kilos, 33 to 55 pounds, and they can grow to 120 centimeters or 4 feet in length. The tail takes up a third of this length. This semi-aquatic mammal is better at moving in the water than on land and is very well equipped for its environment. Its hind paws are webbed like a duck's for swimming, while its forepaws are small and flexible like hands, with 5 fingers ending in short, wide claws. The beaver uses its paws with great dexterity to hold and carry whatever it needs for building purposes. The beaver has 4 incisor teeth that are used for cutting trees and branches and for building its hut. These teeth never stop growing, so to keep them in good working order, they must be used constantly. An especially distinctive feature of the beaver is its broad, flat, scaly tail, which has various functions. Underwater, the tail acts as both a rudder and as an oar. On land, it helps the beaver to sit while cutting trees. A beaver can get rid of excess body heat through its tail, and when it is slapped loudly on the surface of the water, the beaver's tail also serves as an alarm system, warning family members of danger. The beaver is perfectly adapted for aquatic life. It automatically closes its nostrils and ears when diving, and its eyes have a thin, flexible membrane, like a third eyelid, to protect them when underwater. Finally, fur-covered lips can close behind the incisors so that the beaver can cut and chew branches underwater. Beavers are also equipped with a highly specialized circulation system. They are able to slow down their heart rate and direct the flow of blood to the brain. These features make it possible for beavers to stay underwater for as long as 15 minutes. The beaver has 2 pairs of intestinal glands. The first, the anal or oily glands, secrete an oil that is spread on the thick, stiff fur with the aid of the special split-nailed claw found on each hind paw. This claw combs the oil through the fur to waterproof the coat. The second pair of glands, called castor sacs, are found near the anus and produce a yellowish liquid that the animal deposits along the shores of lakes, streams, and ponds to mark its territory. The beaver has a dense undercoat of short, silky hair and a layer of guard hairs that protect the animal from the cold. The beaver is found over most of Canada and the United States, as far south as the Mexican border. It lives anywhere where 2 essential habitat conditions are found. The first is access to water all year around, and the second is enough vegetation for building its hut and feeding. Beavers are herbivores. For a beaver, a good quality habitat would be one where there are deciduous trees such as aspen, silver birch, and maple. Beavers eat both the bark and the leaves of these trees. In the summer, they also eat several kinds of land and water plants. To prepare for winter, they pile up a store of branches underwater near their hut. A poor habitat for a beaver is one that consists mainly of conifers, such as the black spruce. The quality of the surrounding vegetation has a direct influence on beaver populations. For instance, 4 or 5 times more beaver families will be found in an environment where aspen are plentiful than in a habitat where black spruce predominates, and the beavers themselves will be heavier and produce more young each year. An important factor in the beaver's choice of a living site is the type of watercourse. The first task is to build a main dam and several secondary dams to create artificial ponds deep enough so that the water level will remain constant. Beavers therefore prefer a small pond, a lake, or a slow-flowing river. The lake or pond must be deep enough to prevent the water from freezing right to the bottom, as the beavers need to be able to swim under the ice to get to their store of food. It is obviously much more difficult for beavers to build dams on fast-flowing rivers. The type of watercourse available to the beavers has a direct influence on their abundance. There will be 4 or 5 times more beaver families on slow-flowing water than on rivers with strong currents. The proper type of current, however, is not the only important characteristic of an ideal beaver habitat. The type of river bed is also very important. It should be composed of mud and dead vegetation. Beavers need these materials to fill the gaps in their dams and huts. A typical beaver hut is cone-shaped and always has 2 floors and underwater entrances. Huts may vary in diameter from 2 to 4 meters, 6.5 to 13 feet at the base, and are from 1 to 2 meters high, 39 inches to 6.5 feet. The beaver first piles up branches and mud and then hollows out a room and 1 or 2 underwater entrances. In the fall, the hut is covered with another layer of mud to keep out both the cold and predators. Not all huts are built this way, however. Many are constructed on lake or river shores. They too are made of branches and mud, but are not cone-shaped like those built in calm water. It is interesting to note that beavers will also make 1 or more dens right in the bank of the river or lake. Knowing this information about beavers makes it easy to understand why rocky shorelines or streams make poor beaver habitats. Beavers mate for life. An established family usually consists of 2 breeding adults, the young of the preceding litter, and the young born that year. Only 1 litter is produced per year. Mating takes place in the water, under the ice, usually in February or March. After a gestation period of around 105 to 110 days, the female gives birth. The rest of the year is taken up with the raising of the family. The number of young in a litter increases from year to year until the female is 6 or 7 years old. After that age, the number of young born per litter, which varies from 2 to 6, remains stable. The young are born with their eyes open and with fur on their bodies. They begin to gnaw about 10 days after birth and are weaned after 6 or 8 weeks. Although some beavers may live as long as 15 or 16 years, very few survive past the age of 10. Survival means avoiding traps and overcoming obstacles because the causes of death are numerous. First of all, there is trapping, followed by wolf predation. Tularemia, a bacterial disease, can potentially decimate all of the beaver families in the same water system in a relatively short space of time. In spite of these mortality factors, the beaver will be with us for a long time yet. which is fortunate because the beaver is one of our most important mammals. They stabilize water levels and create pools that can be used by other animals, including many species of birds. Without the presence of the beaver, many of our woodland streams would not be nearly so picturesque. Thus, it is hardly necessary to emphasize just how important it is to manage this rich resource. Various rules and regulations have been created by the different jurisdictions where beavers are trapped to manage the harvest of this renewable resource. Trappers have to understand that the goal of these regulations is not to impose arbitrary restraints on their work, but rather to create management tools that will ultimately be beneficial to their livelihood. The trapping license is the first of these control measures. The license, issued on certain conditions, ensures that the trappers operate professionally. Licensing also helps the authorities better control the management of this resource, which includes allotting trap lines. Conditions for obtaining a license vary somewhat from one jurisdiction to another. In certain cases, prospective trappers must take a general course to learn how to trap correctly. Trap lines are granted to trappers according to the laws and regulations in force in each province and territory. Usually, trap lines are granted exclusively to the trapper on a long-term basis, so that she or he can develop a long-term management plan that will ensure steady harvests year after year. In Quebec, exclusive trap lines are allotted through a draw. In Ontario and Western Canada, trapper seniority determines the allotment. The size of trap lines varies from one region to another, calculated by ease of access, the quality of the habitat, the abundance of the fur-bearer resource, and the size of the body of water within the trap line. Good management also means that beaver trapping must be regulated by season. Although trapping seasons vary somewhat from one jurisdiction to another, the deciding factors are the same. The primary consideration in setting seasons is the beaver's reproductive cycle. As to ensure the continuation of the species, beavers need to be able to reproduce undisturbed. The second factor taken into consideration is the quality or primeness of the fur. In late autumn and early winter, beaver fur is at its best and is consequently the most valuable. Sealing pelts has proven to be a good way of improving the management of this resource. Sealing practices vary from one jurisdiction to another, but for obvious reasons, trappers must have their pelts sealed, specifying on forms the dates and places the pelts were harvested. Through sealing, it is possible to keep the trapper's file up to date and also ensure that no illegally trapped furs are sold on the fur market. Some jurisdictions set quotas for beaver harvesting, which can be used as a preventative measure in case of overpopulation and to prevent over-trapping. Aerial inventories are useful both for setting quotas and for showing trappers where beaver families are living on their trap lines. This knowledge enables trappers to better manage their trap line. Although regulating trapping is an important beaver management tool, it isn't the only one that exists. In fact, the regulations are the result of the work carried out by biologists and technicians, both in the laboratory and on the trap lines. In a good management program, harvest statistics from previous years must be kept up to date and studied. Biologists use these statistics to control future harvests and to set quotas for the next season. The actual laboratory work is just as important. Research and carcass analysis of duly sealed beavers provide a wealth of information essential to a clear understanding of the beaver population in a given area. The work of biologists and technicians is thus extremely important. In fact, it complements and supports the work of the trappers. Technicians and biologists can provide trappers with the ways and means of obtaining optimal trapline management. It is important to remember that it is the trapper who is the primary manager of this resource, as trappers themselves decide how many pelts should be harvested from each beaver lodge. The better they are at this management role, the better their livelihood will be. To do their job properly, trappers need to be well acquainted with all the latest techniques, programs, and methods for managing and harvesting beavers. This knowledge enables trappers to maintain the balance between optimum annual harvests and healthy beaver populations. To succeed in this, trappers have to carefully prepare for the opening of the trapping season. They have to make a complete study of the territory using timber assessment maps, copies of any beaver aerial inventory maps available, and in some cases even aerial photos. By studying these documents, trappers can develop a management strategy. It's important to remember that selective harvesting of a trapline is the fundamental notion of good management. This harvest can be done two ways. First, by taking nuisance animals, those living in poor habitats, as well as old beavers. And second, by following a rotation system in the different sectors of the territory. At the same time, trappers should avoid trapping beavers who have recently moved into a good habitat. Beavers can cause serious damage. Every year, fields and roads are flooded and damaged by beaver families who have built their dams along these roads or at the entrances of culverts. In North America, beavers cause millions of dollars worth of damage every year. Given these circumstances, trapper intervention is welcome, as trappers can save the economy considerable sums of money. Outside the trapping season, authorized trappers can capture a live, harmful beaver with a Hancock trap and relocate it to another section of their trap lines. Keeping harvest records from season to season is another aspect of good trapline management. The trapper keeps track of the number of captures and traps in operation in a record book. Collecting this basic information provides both trappers and biologists with the necessary data to better manage each trapping area. A final point that is worth mentioning concerns the kind of trapper-landowner relationship that should exist. Trappers should always ask landowners for permission to use their property, and when permission is granted, it is best to have it in writing. After this, both sides need to agree on the way the trapper is to operate. The trapper will begin by trapping beavers that could cause damage. And of course, he or she should set the traps far enough away from any dwelling place to avoid catching domestic animals. A good relationship between trappers and landowners can only be beneficial to both parties, and it ensures that the fur-bearer resource will be managed well. The beaver remains one of our country's most remarkable sources of wealth. Its ability to shape its environment has become legendary. At the same time, the quality and the beauty of its fur has made it one of the most coveted animals. Yet there is no need to fear that such popularity threatens the beaver's existence, as today, thanks to good management, the beaver is thriving in North America. Better still, by helping to stabilize beaver populations and to control the damage they can cause, trappers are making an important economic contribution.